The text came in just as I was rinsing out Liam's cereal bowl, a thin blue bubble at the top of my screen that felt harmless for half a second until I read it. Stay away from Christmas. We're tired of you. My mother didn't add a period, a comma, not even her usual passive-aggressive ellipsis. Just those words, blunt as a door slamming in my face. Before I could breathe, another notification slid in. A haha emoji from my sister, bright yellow and stupidly cheerful, as if the two of them had rehearsed this moment together. My fingers tightened around the bowl until it creaked. A younger version of me might have cried, might have asked what I'd done wrong this time, might have tried to earn back a seat at the table by offering to cover dinner or drive 6 hours through snow. But something in me had cooled to ice long before December arrived, and the message only made it crystallize. I typed back one single line, then I'll stop touching the bills. No anger, no begging, just truth. I set the phone down and listened to the silence in my kitchen grow sharp enough to cut. I opened my laptop because doing something, anything, kept my hands from shaking. The list of autopays appeared like a confession on the screen. Internet for my mother's house, electric, water, Sienna's car insurance, Ray's truck registration, Paula's medical copays, streaming services, they all used under my name. I clicked remove card on each line, one after another, as if unhooking wires that had been wrapped around my ribs for years. When the screen refreshed, a line I didn't recognize blinked at me. A cabin rental in Flagstaff for December 24 through 27th, fully paid. My name, my card, my family. And not a single invitation sent to me. I sat back, letting that land, letting the truth settle its weight in my chest. For years I'd told myself the giving made me part of them. That paying their bills was a way to stay connected, especially after the divorce, when the loneliness crept in through every window. But staring at the receipt for a Christmas trip they never planned to include me in, I realized it had never been connection. It was dependency dressed up as tradition. Behind me, Liam thumped down the stairs and disappeared into the living room, his laughter drifting up like the sound of a life I was trying to build from scratch. He never asked why we didn't spend more holidays with my mother. He only knew the look I wore after every visit, the tired smile, the headache, the whispered maybe next year. Now I wondered if I'd been lying to both of us. The group chat was still buzzing the way it always did, memes, blurry photos of casseroles, a TikTok of someone dancing in an oversized Santa sweater. Not a single mention of my message. Not a question about whether I was okay. My sister sent another video of a glittery eyeshadow look she claimed she'd invented. Ray added a sticker of a penguin laughing. I stared at the screen, realizing with a jolt that they genuinely thought I was bluffing. So I wrote one more message: autopays are removed. Update your own cards. Then I turned the phone face down and let the quiet stretch out. For a moment, I let myself drift back, just long enough to remember the childhood I'd spent trying to be the easy one. The helper. The responsible daughter. I remembered picking up extra shifts at 17 to pay for Sienna's dance costumes because Mom said she deserved the chance to shine. I remembered the time Ray bragged at a barbecue that he covered all the household bills while the July electric bill sat paid in full inside my purse. I remember telling my mother once timidly that I felt taken for granted, only for her to sigh and say, "Stop being dramatic, Evelyn. Families help each other." Except in our family, help meant I bled and they feasted. A notification buzzed, flipping the phone on its own with the force of vibration. Someone had tagged me in the extended family chat, the one with cousins, aunts, and the Arizona side we rarely saw. I opened it expecting holiday photos. Instead, the message read, "Sienna's new car is gorgeous. Ray did good this year." Under it, a screenshot of my sister's Instagram story, her posing beside the Subaru Outback I had bought for her 3 months earlier. The caption read, "Dad surprised me. I'm the luckiest girl." I felt my pulse in my teeth. Without thinking, I scrolled through my camera roll photos I'd taken the day I picked up the car, the odometer, the clean interior, the signed title. I dropped all 3 into the family group chat with no explanation. A silence deeper than any I'd heard from them followed, the kind that hummed with shifting ground. Someone finally typed, Evelyn, is this real? Another wait. You bought the car. And then my mother stopped stirring things up. This is unnecessary. Unnecessary. The word hit harder than the initial text telling me to stay away from Christmas, because unnecessary was the story of my life in that family. My effort unnecessary, my feelings unnecessary, my place at the table unnecessary, unless they needed something. I opened my notes app, scrolling to the document I kept for moments when I feared I was imagining things. Ledger. Last 14 months. I had written it to remind myself I wasn't losing my mind. I copied the biggest transactions: car insurance, medical copays, vet bills, utilities, grocery runs, and pasted them into the chat. Another silence. But this one felt different, guilt-shaped, heavy. Then a cousin I barely spoke to messaged privately. We always wondered why things didn't add up. I'm sorry we didn't ask sooner. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Something inside me was shifting, plates moving beneath the surface. Mom called. I let it ring. She called again. I pressed decline. I didn't have the energy to hear her talk about reputation, about family pride, about how I always take things too personally. I walked to the window instead. Snowflakes drifted sideways under the street lamp, soft and slow, like the sky itself was exhaling. When the silence settled, it felt different than any silence that had ever come from them. This one belonged to me. I stood there for a long time, feeling the house breathe around me, steady, warm mine. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what they would say next. I wasn't afraid of disappointing anyone. The bowl in the sink, the steam from my mug, Liam humming upstairs, all of it felt like anchors to a life that was finally quietly becoming my own. I picked up my phone one last time, checked that every autopay had truly been removed, and closed the laptop. Behind me, the heater kicked on a soft rumble that sounded strangely like relief. They thought I wouldn't go through with it. They thought I'd come running back the moment they snapped their fingers. They thought I needed them. But as the snow settled and the house grew warmer, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for years. They weren't tired of me. They were tired of losing access to me, and that was the first sign that I was finally free. 3 months before the text that cracked something open inside me, I had stood in a chilly driveway beside a silver-blue Subaru Outback, breathing in the scent of clean upholstery and new beginnings. I'd bought it for Sienna because she'd said she couldn't keep living like this, because the bus was too slow, because Ray didn't believe in helping lazy kids, because Mom said I was the only one who understood responsibility. I'd scraped together the down payment, signed the title, driven it home with the kind of pride I should have reserved for myself. I'd even tied a ribbon around the side mirror, a stupid sentimental flourish I told no one about. It was supposed to be a fresh start for her, a sister's gift, something good. Now I stared at the photo on my phone, the one a cousin had sent in the extended family chat. Sienna, posing next to that same car, chin tilted, hip, jutted a filter casting fake sparkles across the hood. The caption read, "Dad surprised me, I'm so blessed." A heart emoji. A grateful, humbled, inspirational kind of lie. My throat tightened. I remembered the way she'd hugged me lightly the day I handed her the keys, saying, "Eve, you didn't have to do this," but already scrolling Instagram as she slid into the driver's seat. I'd thought her distraction was nerves or embarrassment or gratitude she didn't know how to express. Now I saw it for what it really was, planning her version of the story. I walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the folder where I kept the purchase documents. The signed title transfer, the dealer's invoice, proof of every dollar I'd poured into her freedom. They were real, solid, undeniable, unlike the stories she spun online. Outside, Liam was kicking a soccer ball against the fence, the thump, 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 a steady reminder that life could still feel simple. I slipped the folder back into place, grabbed my phone, and opened the group chat. The cursor blinked in the message bar, almost daring me. Before I typed anything, another memory surfaced, a softer one. I had bought Mom a cashmere scarf for Christmas. Dark charcoal with a subtle woven pattern. I'd picked it out in October, ordered it early, tucked it into my closet with the receipt hidden under the tissue paper. I'd imagined her opening it slowly, her hands smoothing the fabric, the rare moment where she might say, "You didn't have to, Ev." But thank you. I had chased those words for years, but now, after Stay Away from Christmas, the scarf looked like a monument to something extinct. Love that only flowed one direction. The group chat pinged. Another cousin posted a photo of her toddler in Christmas pajamas. Sienna replied with 3 heart emojis. Not a word to me, not a question, nothing. I dropped 3 photos into the chat, the Subaru's 3/4 angle shot, the odometer, and the signed title with my name on it. No caption, no explanation. Silence hit like cold water. Aunt May typed first. Evelyn, "Is this real, Uncle Joe? You bought her a car, Tanya?" I thought Ray paid for that. He bragged at the reunion. Mom finally entered the conversation. Enough. This isn't necessary. My fingers hovered over the keys. I felt the familiar pull, the instinct to back down before the conflict grew too loud, to shrink myself for their comfort. But something steadier held me upright. I typed, "It was me." Ray chimed in. "We never asked you to do that." I wanted to laugh. He used that tone, often stern, dismissive, the voice of a man who wanted credit without responsibility. Another message flashed in the extended family chat. This time a screenshot Tanya must have pulled from Instagram before Sienna deleted it. She wrote beneath the image, "Look." She said this was from her dad. My stomach twisted. I could almost feel the exact moment the truth started burning through the lies they'd woven. I opened the private message from Tanya. Why would she say that? And why didn't you tell us you paid for everything? Because if I didn't help, no one would. Because I'd been trained to anticipate their needs before they even said them. Because the only way I ever felt close to them was by paying for the privilege. I didn't think it mattered. I typed, then deleted it. The truth was, it had always mattered, I just wasn't allowed to say so. Mom messaged again, this time privately. "Stop posting things publicly. You're making us look bad." That was it. That was the heart of it. Not the car, not the bills, not the Christmas cabin they'd booked with my money. Reputation, image, the story they told others. The truth wasn't the problem. I was. I opened the Notes app where I kept my sanity list, a ledger of the past 14 months of expenses I'd paid. I'd started tracking it because some part of me once doubted my own memory. I copied the biggest items: utilities, medical copays, the emergency vet bill for their dog groceries, Ray's truck repairs, and pasted them into the group chat. Another silence, this one heavier. Then a cousin I barely spoke to messaged privately. "We always sensed something was off. I'm sorry we didn't say anything sooner." The apology soothed nothing and everything at once. My phone buzzed violently, a call from Mom. Then from Sienna. Then from Ray. I pressed decline each time. A new message arrived, this one, from a relative in Arizona. "Your mom told us you refused to help last summer with the house repairs, but your receipts say otherwise." I swallowed. 100 tiny lies embedded in decades of family traditions suddenly exposed to daylight. Outside, the sky darkened, clouds pulling tight like a storm front gathering strength. Liam pushed the soccer ball into the house and asked if we could make grilled cheese for dinner. I told him yes, grateful for something normal. But before I put the phone down, one last message popped up in the group chat. Sienna had changed the group name from Family Group to Holiday Plans, as if erasing me from the title erased me from the story. She posted a photo of the cabin they'd rented, the cabin I'd unknowingly paid for. Ray wrote underneath, "Gonna be a great Christmas." I stared at the screen, the casual cruelty of it. Then I closed the phone and set it face down, letting the room settle. The Subaru was gone. The scarf would go soon, too. The bills were no longer my burden. The stories they told were crumbling. And for the first time, instead of fear or sadness, I felt a faint, clean line of resolve forming through the center of my chest, clear, sharp, and solid. This wasn't just distance. This was the beginning of freedom. The house was quiet in that strange way. December mornings sometimes are too still, too expectant, like the world was holding its breath. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open to the document I'd avoided for weeks. Ledger. Last 14 months. The title alone made my chest tighten. It wasn't a journal or a rant or anything emotional. It was numbers, dates, charges. A cold, hard history of everything I'd paid while my family laughed, posed, bragged, and forgot I existed unless they needed something. Scrolling through it felt like flipping the pages of a book I never agreed to write. Sienna's car insurance $206 a month. Ray's truck repairs $872. Mom's medical co-pays. Electricity, water, internet. Streaming subscriptions she swore she didn't use but somehow was always logged into. And then the Flagstaff cabin again, right there in black and white. $1,000 I'd covered without knowing a thing about their plans. Altogether, the total made me sit back in my chair. It was more than half my annual income. I blinked at it, waiting for disbelief, for shock, for something. But all I felt was a quiet, steady clarity. Feelings were debatable, facts were not. Before I could second-guess myself, I started copying the list into the extended family. Chat, the big one. The one with cousins from Arizona, aunts from Oregon, and relatives who only saw us on Facebook. My fingers didn't tremble this time. I pasted everything in neat bullet points, each one a small truth laid bare. Then I hit send. The typing indicator blinked almost instantly. Aunt May Evelyn. All of this is you, Uncle Joe. Why on earth were you paying their bills? Cousin Lily. Wait, Ray told us he covered everything. I knew something felt off. Mom's reply came slowly, like she was choosing each word carefully. This isn't necessary, Evelyn. Stop making a scene. A scene. She had called my entire existence a scene. I inhaled through my nose, steady and slow, then added the screenshots. The Subaru invoice. The car insurance statements. The cabin reservation. The vet bill. The dentist payment I'd covered when Sienna couldn't chew. If truth was a blade, I decided it was time to let it cut cleanly. The chat froze. The silence was louder than the questions. No one reacted, no emojis, no typing dots, nothing. I stared at the screen, wondering if my phone had died. Then a message pinged private. Lily Ev, did your mom really say last summer that you refused to help with the house repairs? She told everyone that. But this shows you paid for everything. I hadn't known she told them that. I hadn't known she told anyone anything. My world was small. Mom's words, Sienna's needs, Ray's expectations, but theirs had been wide and curated. Another message slid in this time from Tanya. A screenshot from Sienna's Instagram story, before she deleted it. Her sitting in the Subaru writing, Dad gifted me the perfect Christmas car. My fingers tingled, not with anger exactly, but with something quieter and heavier, disbelief turning into certainty. I typed nothing back. Some things didn't need commentary. A call came from Mom, vibrating the whole table. I let it ring. A second call. Decline. A third. Voicemail. The group chat slowly flickered back to life. Uncle Joe, Paula, why would you let Eve pay all this? Aunt May, I remember, asking if you needed money for the electric bill. You said Ray handled it. Mom, I'm not doing this publicly. We'll talk privately. I didn't respond. Didn't open the private chat she immediately initiated. Instead, I stared at the ledger again. The longer I looked, the more I realized how deep the pattern ran. Every time my family had needed something, money, errand, support, I stepped forward. Every time I'd needed something, even something small, they stepped back. The truth wasn't cruel, it was simply accurate. A new message came in an unexpected one. A cousin from Arizona, Ev. I'm sorry. We always assumed you were doing well because your mom said you liked being independent. We didn't know she meant you were the only one paying for everything. Mom used the word independent like it was a flaw, like it excused everything. Another private message pinged, this one from someone I barely spoke to. If you need someone to back you up, I'm here. I always knew something wasn't right. I didn't realize my eyes were warm until I blinked. Not tears, just heat. Something melting after being frozen too long. Then the family chat lit up again. Ray, Evelyn, take those numbers down. You're making your mother upset. Upset. The word made something sharp twist inside me. Because I had been upset quietly, politely, invisibly for years. I typed a single sentence, the numbers stay, and then I put the phone down. Outside, the sun dipped behind the mountains, turning the sky a bruised shade of purple. Liam peeked into the kitchen, hair sticking up, cheeks flushed from running around. He asked what was for dinner, his voice soft like he sensed the tension hanging in the room. Grilled cheese, I said, and he grinned, satisfied. While the pan heated, I glanced at my phone one more time. The chat was eerily still again, like everyone inside it had run out of excuses at the same time. One last message appeared from Lily. We've seen the red flags for a long time. We're here now. The words settled over me like a blanket laid gently over cold shoulders. Maybe I had been alone for longer than I realized. Maybe I wasn't anymore. As I flipped the sandwich, the quiet in the house didn't feel empty. It felt clean, like a room finally aired out after years of stale breath and closed doors. The truth, even when painful, had a strange kind of mercy to it. And as I sat down beside Liam, handing him a plate with extra cheese the way he liked, I felt a shift inside me, slow, sure, inevitable. The story my family told about me was dying. The one I was writing was finally beginning. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft, steady, honest. Aunt Nora's text came just after sunrise when the house was washed in pale winter light, and I was sitting at the table pretending my coffee tasted like anything other than exhaustion. We've known something was wrong for years, she wrote. We just didn't know how much they put on you. The words made my breath hitch, not because they surprised me, but because they finally confirmed something I'd been afraid to say out loud. Someone else had seen it. Someone else had been paying attention. A second text followed almost immediately. I'm on your side. Whatever they say today, don't let them pull you back in. I stared at the screen while the house hummed faintly around me, the fridge, clicking, the heater, switching on, the quiet noises of a home settling into winter. It felt like the world outside my walls was beginning to tilt, as if the truth had nudged everything off its usual axis. More messages came in through the extended family chat this time, from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in months. I remember your mom saying you overreacted when she asked you to cover the property tax last year. But didn't she message you at midnight, begging for help? I'm sorry we ignored it. The way she phrased it, ignored it, settled heavily on the back of my tongue. Then came a memory I hadn't revisited in years, a Thanksgiving when I was 21. Mom had a migraine, she said, and couldn't handle the bill at the grocery store. I'd covered it, hopeful she'd notice how much I was trying. Later that night, she told the table, we managed everything ourselves. Our girls don't need to worry. I remembered the quiet sting behind my eyes, the way Ray had clapped my shoulder and said, not everything has to be about you, Ev. It was surreal watching the family history I'd carried alone unravel publicly. My phone buzzed again. Mom, I'm so sorry. I froze, staring at the message. She had typed the words, but the voice I read them in was still hers, the one that used apologies like soft bandages meant to hide bruises instead of heal them. Before I could decide whether to answer, another message appeared in the family chat, this one from Aunt Nora. She's been carrying all of you for years. We all saw it. We just didn't know how deep it went. Then, unexpectedly, another voice popped up. Cousin Leah, your mom, always acted like Sienna deserved more. She used to say you were the strong one, so you didn't need attention. That never sat right with me. Strong. As if strength excused being cut open for everyone else. A memory flashed me at 16, sitting in the bleachers while Mom brushed Sienna's hair and told her she was gifted, brilliant, born special. I had been runner-up in a statewide writing competition that year. When I showed Mom the certificate, she'd smiled politely and said, That's nice, Ev. Do you want to help me with dinner? My chest tightened with something old and familiar. The phone buzzed again. Now, a private message from Lily, a screenshot of the smaller group chat Mom had tried to keep separate. Evelyn likes paying, someone had written. It makes her feel important. I stared at the words for a long moment, the kind of staring that builds heat behind your eyes. The kettle clicked off behind me, breaking the trance. I poured hot water over a tea bag just to keep my hands moving. Anything to stop the tremble rising in my fingertips. I didn't have to wait long before another message appeared, this time from Mom herself calling. I didn't answer. She tried again. Decline. The screen showed her third attempt before fading to black. A knock at my front door made my heart lurch. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a second, fear crawled up my spine, the old kind I'd felt as a kid when I'd overheard whispered arguments between my parents in the hallway. I moved quietly toward the window and peered out. Mom was on my porch, holding a pie tin wrapped in foil. The same pie she had brought every holiday since I was 5, the one I never liked but always pretended to enjoy. She knocked again, softer this time. I cracked the door, standing firmly behind it. Mom, she didn't step forward, didn't force her way in. She looked tired, shoulders drawn inward as if the cold had finally seeped into her bones. I brought something, she said, lifting the pie slightly. I don't like that pie, I said before I could stop myself. She froze, hurt flickering across her face. I know, she murmured. I guess I forgot. It was the closest she'd ever come to admitting she hadn't really seen me. I didn't invite her in. She sat on the porch step anyway, letting out a long, slow breath into the cold air. They're going to spin this, she said finally, voice thin. Your sister, Ray. They'll make themselves the victims now that everyone's looking. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Is that what you came to tell me? She shook her head. I came because I don't want to lose you. I didn't know how to answer that, not when she'd told me just 2 days ago to stay away from Christmas. She stared at her hands like they were foreign to her. You've always been so capable, Eve. So strong. I thought you didn't need as much from me. I needed honesty, I said quietly. The wind whipped gently across the porch, scattering a few dry leaves between us. She nodded slowly. You're not alone in this anymore. Part of me softened at her words, but another part held firm. The part that remembered the years of being the dependable daughter, the reliable one, the emotional landing pad for every crisis she had no intention of handling herself. She stood awkwardly, wiping her eyes. They'll beg by morning, she said softly, almost like a warning. Your sister can't handle losing anything she thinks she deserves. The phrase landed hard. Anything she thinks she deserves. Mom touched the pie tin, then left it on the porch. She didn't ask me to take it. She didn't ask me to let her inside. She just stepped down the walkway and disappeared into the cold. I left the pie where it was. Inside, the house felt warmer than it had all season. Liam's laughter drifted from upstairs, and I climbed the stairs, slowly listening to the sound like it was music. Later, as I stood in the living room and watched snow drift under the streetlight, I felt something inside me tighten into a new shape. Not anger, not grief. Something like resolve. My family wasn't done, but neither was I. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something they'd never expected. A version of me who didn't fold, didn't cushion their mistakes, didn't bleed quietly to keep the peace. I didn't know what the morning would bring, but I knew one thing: the door inside me had closed, and it wasn't opening the same way again. By morning, the missed calls had stacked so high across my lock screen, it looked like someone had been hammering on a door all night. 16 from Sienna, 9 from Mom, 4 from Ray, and a handful from numbers I didn't recognize, likely burner accounts they used when they wanted to avoid confrontation but still demand attention. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I scrolled through the text messages they'd finally decided to send. Sienna, why are the bills bouncing? Sienna again. Is this a glitch? Then we need to talk? Don't do this. And finally, a longer one. clearly written in the car, in panic, maybe in tears. The emoji had nothing to do with you. Mom's text looked harsher than she meant. We're all just stressed. You're blowing this out of proportion. We could fix this if you'd stop making it public. Not one sentence said I'm sorry. Not one said you were right. Not one admitted the truth. They'd gotten comfortable treating me like the family wallet. I set the phone down long enough to breathe. Long enough to hear Liam padding down the stairs, yawning. He grabbed cereal, oblivious to the chaos unfolding 3 feet from him. I envied that. I envied the simplicity of being 13 and believing the world could be repaired with pancakes and video games. The group chat reactivated at 8:02 a.m. Mom, this is between us. You didn't need to involve the entire family. Ray, we never asked you to pay those things. I responded with a screenshot of his text from 6 months ago. Ev, can you help with the property tax just this once? We're short, and another truck repairs came out of nowhere. Can you float this until next week? Next week had never come. Then Mom tried a new script, the softer one that used to work on me when I was younger. You're taking things too personally. We can all sit down and talk like adults. I didn't respond. The silence from my end seemed to crack something open because suddenly the extended family jumped back into the chat. Aunt Nora, she's not taking anything personally. She's showing receipts. Uncle Joe, Ray, we all heard you brag about paying for Sienna's car. Cousin Leah, this is embarrassing for all of you, not Evelyn. Someone else chimed in, a relative I barely knew. I wondered why Paula always said Evelyn was too independent. Now I know what she meant. Their words weren't comforting. They were confirmation. The truth had finally grown too big to keep in the shadows. Another buzz, this time from Ray privately. You're making your mother sick with all this drama. Delete the screenshots. This is childish. I typed. They're staying. No exclamation point. No justification. Just fact. My finger hovered over the screen, waiting for the next round. It didn't take long. Sienna, did you really have to post everything? Dad is furious. Mom is beside herself. A second later, do you even care? That made me laugh, soft, empty, humorless. Caring was the only thing I'd done for 34 years. Another message slid in from a cousin, a memory I'd forgotten, but they hadn't. Cousin Daniel, remember when your car died and Sienna posted God provides, and then you showed up with your credit card? I felt sick reading your receipts. You've been drowning. The chat erupted again, questions, disbelief, apologies from people who had never apologized to me. I could feel the balance shifting. Not in my favor necessarily, just into honesty. I opened my laptop again and checked the autopay list. It felt like pulling vines off my ankles one by one. As I clicked through, I noticed one last charge buried under an old email of mine: Sienna's gym membership. $38 monthly. Automatic. Long forgotten. I canceled it. 5 minutes later, Sienna texted, "Why is my pass declined?" I didn't bother answering. The screen lit up again, but this time with something unexpected: Aunt Nora calling. I picked up. Her voice was low, steady. They're unraveling. Ev, Ray's yelling. Your mom's blaming your sister. Sienna's crying and saying she didn't mean it. They're scared. I didn't speak. And they're embarrassed, she added. They're terrified of how the family sees them now that everyone knows the truth. Embarrassment, not remorse. That part mattered. After we hung up, I sat for a long moment with my hands folded in my lap, staring at the kitchen wall. Years of subtle slights and loud expectations flickered like a film reel. Birthday dinners, canceled because Sienna had a bad day, electric bills shoved into my hands, while Mom claimed everything was handled, the constant pressure to be grateful for scraps of affection. The heater clicked on behind me, warm air swirling through the room. I opened the family chat one more time, not to argue, but to finish what I had started. I posted the Subaru invoice, the $2,000 I'd spent on down payment, the signed title transfer, a photo of the bow I'd tied the day I brought it home, then the message, The car is being listed tomorrow. The watch is going to consignment. I'm done funding this family. I'm done being treated like an option. The chat went still. No typing dots. No excuses. No jokes. Just silence. Real silence. The kind that comes when the truth has dropped heavy and undeniable. Hours passed. Liam and I ate grilled cheese again. We watched a movie. I checked the phone only once, still silent. But in the quiet hum of the house, I could feel the ground shifting. My mother's frantic pacing in her living room. Ray cursing under his breath as he tried to rewrite the story. Sienna panicking about the sudden collapse of the life she'd been floating on. And underneath it all, I felt something in myself cinch into place, a new kind of stillness. Not anger, not revenge, power. The quiet kind that doesn't need to shout. Later that night, as snow tapped lightly against the window, the phone lit once more. A final message in the family chat: "We're coming by tomorrow. We need to talk face to face." I placed the phone face down, turned off the light, and whispered to the silence of my living room, "We'll talk on my terms." And for the first time, the silence answered back with peace. The morning the Subaru left my driveway for good was colder than I expected, a thin frost clinging to the edges of the windows like the house itself wasn't ready to let go. I watched my breath fog the glass while waiting for Clara, the woman who had messaged me late the night before about buying the car. Her tone in the text had been simple, polite, grateful in a way I wasn't used to. "My daughter starts college next month. We've been searching for something reliable." It was the kind of message that didn't ask for pity or demand sacrifice, it asked for possibility. When she arrived, her old sedan wheezed into the driveway, like it was exhaling its final prayers. The passenger door creaked, and a young woman stepped out, a girl barely 20 with tired eyes and hands that fidgeted like she wasn't used to being on the receiving end of anything good. "Hi," Clara said, pulling her coat tighter. "Is this it?" Her voice held warmth without expectation. I nodded, stepping aside so she could see the Subaru, fully the clean interior, the newly polished hood, the tiny flecks of ice still melting on the windshield. "Oh," her daughter breathed. "It's beautiful." Her voice cracked on the last word, and I felt something in my chest loosen. Clara walked around the car, slowly inspecting each detail with a reverence I hadn't expected. She ran her hand over the trunk, the driver's door, then pressed her palm lightly against the steering wheel when I opened the front door for her. The girl slid into the seat, eyes wide, her fingers brushing the dashboard like she didn't quite believe any of it was real. "It feels like a miracle," she whispered. The words hit me harder than they should have, because I had once imagined Sienna saying something like that. Saying thank you, saying it mattered. Instead, she'd posed online as if Ray had written a check dipped in gold. Clara stepped back toward me, a soft, hopeful smile forming. "I'm not going to haggle," she said. "Your listing price is more than fair, and I can tell you've cared for it." She handed me an envelope, soft, worn at the corners, packed with neat bills. Real money, real effort, earned, not expected. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Clara nodded once. "If the car is as honest as you are, it's worth every dollar." Honest. A word no one in my family had used with me unless it was to accuse me of being too honest, too blunt, too much. I signed the papers, my hand steady. The moment the pen left the page, something inside me shifted, a clean cut, a quiet freedom. While I checked the tire tread for her, Clara touched my sleeve gently. "You look like someone who's carried too much alone," she said. The words hit their mark. They lodged right in the place where the exhaustion lived, the place that still felt half bruised, half relieved. I swallowed. "I'm learning to put some of it down." She gave me a small smile. "Good. Someone like you shouldn't drown just because others refuse to learn how to swim." Her daughter climbed out of the car, cheeks flushed from excitement. "Mom," she whispered, "it feels like I can breathe in there." That was it. That was the moment I knew letting go of the Subaru was the right decision, not because it hurt less, but because it meant the gift was finally going to someone who knew how to receive it. Before they left, Clara pulled something from her pocket, a tiny wooden bead bracelet worn smooth at the edges. "For luck," she said, placing it in my palm. "From one mother to another." My throat tightened. "Thank you." They drove away, the Subaru gliding down the road quietly, confidently, like it had been waiting for this new chapter. I watched until the taillights blinked into the distance and disappeared entirely. The empty space left behind felt like a wound and a relief at the same time. Not long after my phone buzzed. "Sienna, did you list my car?" No greeting, no apology, no recognition, just entitlement. I stared at the message, feeling the old reflex rise, the urge to explain, to justify, to calm the waters. But it faded as quickly as it came. "It was never your car, Sienna," I typed. Then I turned off notifications. No shaking hands, no regret, just a steady inhale. Back inside, I opened the hall closet, the one where I'd hidden the expensive scarf I'd bought Mom as a Christmas gift months ago. Dark gray cashmere, soft as breath, chosen because she once mentioned liking that color. I held it for a moment, feeling the weight of every unreturned kindness wrapped into its fibers. Then I folded it again and placed it in the donation box. Love without reciprocation wasn't love. It was self-destruction with a pretty bow. I cleaned the kitchen next, wiping down counters, sweeping crumbs, letting the house settle into its new shape. Every sound felt different without the tension of expected interruption. No buzzing notifications demanding money, no guilt-laden text, no passive-aggressive reminders. Just quiet, just peace, just my home. Liam wandered in as I finished sorting the donation bags. His hair stuck up on one side and he blinked sleepily at the clutter on the floor. "Are we still not going to Grandma's?" he asked. "No," I said gently, brushing a crumb off his cheek. "We're staying home." "Home should feel good," he nodded, like that made perfect sense. "Good. Can we get pizza later?" I smiled. "We can." He trotted back to the living room, humming something off-key, and I stood there in the kitchen, letting the moment wash over me. A moment where I wasn't bracing for impact. A moment where my worth wasn't measured in dollar amounts or sacrifices. A moment where my sons simply wanted pizza with me, not with their chaos. I looked out the front window again at the empty driveway where the Subaru had sat. It should have looked bare. It should have felt like loss. Instead, it looked like possibility. A blank space where something harmful had been removed. A space where something new, something mine, might grow. For the first time in years, December didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a beginning. The day after selling the Subaru began with an eerie kind of quiet, the kind that makes you pause in the doorway and wonder what's missing. The house felt still, like a snow globe someone had shaken hours ago and left on the counter to settle. I made coffee, slowly listening to the soft crackle of the heater, the muted clink of the spoon against the mug. No buzzing phone, no demands, no emergencies. It should have felt peaceful, but instead it felt like the air before a storm, charged, waiting. I glanced at my phone anyway, more out of habit than hope. No messages from Mom, none from Ray, none from Sienna. After the frenzy of the previous day, the silence was unnerving. Liam wandered into the kitchen in mismatched socks, rubbing his eyes. "It's too quiet," he mumbled. I laughed softly. "That's not something people usually complain about." He shrugged and reached for cereal. "It's weird. Like, quiet, quiet." He wasn't wrong. After breakfast, I opened my laptop to double-check the autopays, needing the reassurance. The list was clean now. No utilities to Mom's house, no car insurance to Ray's truck, no medical co-pays tied to my card, no monthly gym charge under Sienna's name. Every tether I had been pretending not to feel was finally severed. Just as I was about to close the browser, a stray entry caught my eye, an old subscription linked to an even older email of mine. Sienna's gym membership, $38, automatic, forgotten. I canceled it without hesitation. 5 minutes later, my phone lit up. "Sienna, why is my pass?" Declined. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the table. Outside, the mail truck rumbled down the street. I slipped into my boots and stepped onto the porch, the cold air biting through the seams of my coat. The mailbox was stuffed with the usual clutter: flyers, bills, a holiday catalog, but wedged between them was something I didn't expect. A cream-colored envelope, my name written in looping handwriting. My stomach twisted. It was Sienna's handwriting. She'd always dotted her I's with a tiny upward flick, like her pen was trying to escape the page. I didn't open it right away. Not out of fear exactly, more like bracing for impact. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table, where it seemed to pulse with its own kind of quiet. The phone buzzed again. "Aunt Nora, your mom is unraveling. She's been calling everyone since sunrise." Before I could respond, a second message came. "Lily Ray is furious. Sienna's been crying. They're all blaming each other." I leaned back in my chair, letting that image settle, my family spinning in circles, each one desperate to avoid the responsibility landing where it belonged. The phone buzzed once more. "Tanya, your mom told people someone leaked the screenshots, but others are saying she posted them by accident." I pressed my palm to my forehead. "Of course," I muttered. Paula's greatest fear had always been humiliation. Not hurting her kids, not fairness, just image. When the house was quiet again, I finally picked up the envelope and tore the seal. Inside was a folded letter and a smaller slip of paper tucked neatly behind it. The letter came first. "Ev, I don't know how to fix this. I don't even know where to start. I've taken advantage of you in ways I told myself weren't a big deal. I've been jealous of you for being strong, and I leaned on that strength until it broke. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't know how to be better, but I want to try. Please don't leave me behind. Love, Sienna." The words blurred slightly, not from tears but from something heavier. Recognition. Grief. Maybe the faintest hint of forgiveness trying to form. The smaller paper slipped out onto the table, a medical document. My breath caught when I realized what it was. An ultrasound appointment. A tiny black and white image. Barely formed, barely a whisper of a life. I closed my eyes, letting my hand fall over my mouth. It explained the panic, the desperation, the sudden shift in tone. But it didn't excuse it. It didn't erase the years. It didn't rewrite what she'd done. I folded the paper back into the envelope just as my phone buzzed again, another call from Mom. I didn't answer. Her face in the tiny preview box looked wrong. Red-eyed makeup smudged the look of someone who had lost control of the narrative and didn't know how to get it back. The call faded. A new message took its place. "Mom, we need to talk, please." It was the first time she'd said please in years. I didn't reply. The rest of the afternoon passed in wary quiet. I tried to clean the kitchen, reorganize the pantry, distract myself with anything, but my mind kept circling the same questions. What did Sienna want from me now? What was Mom preparing to say? How long before Ray came pounding on my door? Just after sunset, my phone lit up with one short, chilling message from Aunt Nora. "They're coming tomorrow, all of them." My breath stilled. I typed back. Her response came fast. "Paula. Ray. Sienna, they're planning a face-to-face. Be ready." As if I hadn't spent my entire life being ready for the next wave. A minute later, another message pinged, this one from Mom. "We'll come by in the morning. Don't lock the door." I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a request. It was a habit, a reflex, an assumption. I placed the phone down and glanced toward the hallway, where Liam slept, his light, snoring, drifting through the cracked door. For him, for the version of me he deserved. I whispered the words out loud. "I don't have to open anything. I don't want to." Outside, snow began to fall in slow, deliberate flakes, each one landing softly against the quietest house I had ever lived in. Tomorrow, the storm would arrive on 2 feet and 3 voices. But tonight belonged to me. The SUV turned into my driveway just after 3, its tires grinding over the thin crust of snow like an animal clearing its throat before it strikes. I stood in the hallway, breath measured, pulse steady, in a way that felt unnatural. I'd been preparing for this moment since the text that told me to stay away from Christmas. Since the laughing emoji. Since the silence that followed truth. I walked to the door and slid the chain lock into place, not to barricade myself, but to give myself room. A second later, a sharp knock rattled the wood. Evelyn Mom called, her voice tight. "Open up." I cracked the door 3 inches, just enough to see all 3 of them standing shoulder to shoulder like a jury. Mom in her heavy coat, Ray, stiff and irritated, Sienna, pale with swollen eyes and a hand pressed low against her stomach as if she didn't quite realize she was doing it. "We need to talk," Ray said, as if the driveway were a boardroom and I was an employee he needed to correct. "Then talk," I replied. "From there." Ray's jaw flexed. "Don't be ridiculous." I kept my hand on the chain. My house. My terms. Before anyone else could try to push past me, a second car pulled up behind them. Aunt Nora and Lily stepped out, both of them in bright coats, refusing to blend into the somber lineup. They didn't approach the porch. They didn't need to. Their presence alone shifted the air. Mom stiffened. "What are they doing here?" Support Nora said, simply folding her arms. "Someone should make sure this stays honest." Mom's face flushed with something between offense and fear. "Fine," she said, though, her voice cracked on the word. She cleared her throat, smoothing her coat, as if that alone could reset the hierarchy she'd always depended on. "We didn't mean what we said in the text," she began. "Things were taken out of context." I didn't blink. "Which part? The stay away from Christmas, or the we're tired of you?" Mom flinched but recovered quickly. "You're misunderstanding." "No," I said, voice level. "I finally understand exactly." Ray let out a bitter laugh. "You're blowing everything out of proportion. Families fight. Families don't expect one person to bankroll everything and then lock them out of holidays." Nora snapped from the walkway. Ray shot her a glare, but she didn't budge. Sienna stepped forward, then trembling mascara smudged her chin, quivering like she was holding her face together with sheer will. "I didn't mean the emoji," she whispered. "I wasn't laughing at you. I was scrolling. I didn't." I held up a hand. "Stop. You don't owe me an explanation for an emoji. You owe me honesty for everything else." Her eyes filled. I know, Ev. I messed up." Mom jumped in before I could respond. "She's been under a lot of stress. She didn't think that's the problem." I cut in. "She's never had to." The porch fell silent except for the sound of wind scraping along the railing. Sienna's hand drifted again to her stomach, fingers curling protectively. I watched the movement, a soft, involuntary gesture, and something in my chest tightened, but not in the way it used to, not with obligation or guilt. Nora saw it too. Her gaze sharpened. "Sienna," she said quietly. "Are you pregnant?" Sienna froze. Mom went pale. Ray's head snapped toward her. What? Sienna's mouth trembled. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The truth rippled through the cold air with a force that made everyone sway. Mom pressed a hand to her forehead. "You said you weren't seeing anyone." "I didn't think it was the right time," Sienna whispered. "I didn't know how to tell you, any of you." Ray cursed under his breath, pacing a tight line in the snow. Nora looked up at me, her brows softening. "And now we understand the panic." I swallowed. "It doesn't change what she did." "No," Sienna said quickly, voice trembling. "I know it doesn't. I know I've acted like the world owed me, like you owed me. And I'm so sorry, Ev. I'm trying. I'm just scared." Her voice cracked on the last word. I didn't move closer. I didn't open the door wider. I stood exactly where I needed to stand. Mom clasped her hands tightly. "Evelyn, listen, your sister is going through something. We all are. Maybe we said the wrong thing, but this public display you created, I couldn't help it." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "Public," I repeated. "I posted in our family chat. You lied publicly. For years." Mom's lips parted wordlessly. Nora stepped closer to the porch, her boots crunching through the snow. Paula, you told everyone Evelyn refused to help with the house repairs. Meanwhile, she paid all the bills. Mom didn't deny it. Her jaw trembled. Ray tried again, more desperate this time. Can we just start over? We came here to apologize. I nodded once. Good, apologize. He blinked. Right now. Yes, I said. Right now, without excuses. Ray shifted shoulders, tightening. Look, maybe we took advantage. Maybe we let you do too much. But you never said no. I wasn't allowed to say no. Sienna let out a tiny sob. I kept going. You all liked the version of me who stayed quiet, who paid, who never asked for anything back. And the second I stopped, just stopped, you treated me like I was disposable. Mom's face broke, then something in her finally cracking open. I was wrong, she whispered. I raised you thinking you were the strong one, the independent one. I thought you didn't need as much. I needed honesty, I said softly. Sienna stepped closer, her fingers digging into the fabric of her sweater. I'm scared, Ev. I never thought about money because I knew you'd fix things. I didn't mean to hurt you. I don't know how to be anything else. Her voice was so small, it nearly vanished in the wind. For a moment, no one spoke. The cold air drifted between us like a pause long overdue. Then Ray did something I never expected. He lowered himself onto one knee, not with theatrics, not with a dramatic sigh, just quietly. Like a man finally stripped of every excuse he'd ever worn. Sienna followed, tears streaking down her face. Then shakily, Mom knelt too, her breath fogging in front of her. 3 people on their knees in the snow, not begging but surrendering. I unhooked the chain but did not open the door wider. I stepped out just enough to let my voice reach them clearly. I forgive you, I said. Mom looked up, eyes wet. But nothing goes back to the way it was, I continued. Forgiveness isn't a reset button. I'm not your wallet. I'm not your emotional sponge. I'm not coming running every time you fall. They nodded slowly, carefully, as if afraid to break the fragile truth hanging between us. Sienna whispered through a trembling breath, I don't want my baby to grow up like we did. Something in me softened, not toward them, but toward myself, toward the girl I used to be, toward the woman finally stepping out of the wreckage. They rose slowly, brushing snow from their knees, eyes lowered. We'll give you space, Mom said quietly, as much as you need. I stepped back into my doorway. As they reached the SUV, Sienna turned once more, her hand resting on her stomach. Ev, please don't tell anyone yet. Not about the baby. I nodded once. Not a promise to protect her, not a promise to carry her. Just acknowledgement. When they drove away, the snow fell in soft, unsteady flakes, dissolving against the warm breath of the house behind me. That house, quiet, steady mine, felt different when I stepped back inside. Like a door had finally opened in the right direction. The morning after they knelt in the snow felt unreal, like waking up in a house whose walls had shifted overnight. I opened my eyes, expecting the tightness in my chest, the familiar dread that came after any confrontation with my family. But it wasn't there. Instead, there was a strange stillness, a quiet that felt earned instead of forced. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has passed, but the debris is still scattered across the lawn. When I went downstairs, a thin envelope had been slipped under my door. My name written in Mom's handwriting, letters slanted like she'd been rushing. I picked it up without opening it, letting the weight, or lack of weight, sit in my palm. 3 words were written on the front in tiny script. Please talk today. It wasn't accusatory, demanding, or manipulative. If anything, it looked like something she'd struggled to write. That alone made me set the envelope aside. I wasn't ready, not yet. My phone buzzed before I'd even poured my coffee. Aunt Nora? They fought all night. Nobody slept. Ray stormed out for hours. Paula is a mess. Sienna's barely speaking. Then another. They're scared, Ev. They finally understand what losing you costs. The phrasing lingered with me, what losing you costs. Costs. Even when the truth was emotional, financial language had woven itself into everything between us. I almost typed something back, but the phone buzzed again. Lily, also, your mom mentioned something about the watch. She said you didn't understand what it meant. Do you know what she's talking about? I didn't. The watch I had sent to consignment had been nothing more than an attempted gift, a symbol of affection I'd foolishly assigned value to. But Mom's panic yesterday, it had been real. A different kind of fear. I was still thinking about it when I saw the familiar SUV roll up my driveway again. My shoulders tensed reflexively, but this time something felt calmer inside me. Not because I trusted them, because I trusted myself. They didn't rush onto the porch like they normally would. They didn't let themselves in or knock like they owned the space. They stood at the bottom of the stairs, huddled against the cold, waiting for permission to step forward. I opened the door fully this time, though I didn't move aside. Mom clutched a small paper bag to her chest, her eyes red-rimmed. Ray stood beside her, hands shoved in his jacket pockets, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Sienna hung back, both hands clasped over her stomach in a protective fold. Mom said quietly, her breath fogging in the winter air. We need to say some things. Then say them here. She nodded, accepting the boundary without argument. Ray spoke first, surprising all of us. I lied, he said plainly. I bragged about paying for the car, the bills. I let people believe things because it made me look good. I was dead wrong. The sentence landed like an apology years too late. I didn't forgive him in that moment, but I did recognize the truth in it, the way it sagged his shoulders, the way he couldn't hold my gaze. Sienna stepped forward, next eyes wet. I didn't know how to stop expecting things from you. I thought because you always said yes, it meant you wanted to. I didn't understand I was hurting you. I didn't tell her she hadn't understood. I didn't tell her she had. Some truths didn't need to be spoken aloud. Mom stepped closer, clutching the paper bag. I need to explain something about the watch. My breath caught because I hadn't expected that to be the first thing out of her mouth. She swallowed hard. It wasn't just a gift you bought for me. The design looked familiar because your father gave me one almost identical when I was pregnant with you. The world stilled. Not dramatically, quietly, like a bird landing on snow. My father, I asked, though I already knew she didn't mean Ray. Mom nodded. Your real father. Before Ray. He kept a small box at the bank. After he passed, I couldn't bring myself to open it. Not for years. But your watch looked like his. It scared me. She pulled something from the paper bag, a folded slip of paper with a key taped to it. This opens the box he left behind, she whispered. He wanted you to have whatever was inside, but I didn't know how to tell you without telling you everything else. I was ashamed. It didn't absolve her. It didn't fix the years. But it cracked something open inside me, another truth I hadn't known I needed. Ray stepped forward again, his voice low. We don't expect you to come back. Not to holidays. Not to bills. We don't want to lose you for good. Sienna swallowed a sob. And I don't want my baby raised in the same lies I grew up in. Her hands tightened around her stomach. Her eyes flicked up to mine, pleading but not demanding. For the first time I saw her, not as the girl who had been handed everything, but as someone terrified of repeating every mistake she'd been taught. Mom's voice cracked. Please, Ev, we're not asking you for anything. Not money. Not help. Just hear us. The cold air stung my cheeks as I stepped fully onto the porch. I forgive you, I said. Mom gasped softly. Ray dropped his gaze. Sienna cried again quietly. But forgiveness, I continued, doesn't mean going back. It doesn't erase what happened. It doesn't make me your fixer again. I'm choosing peace, and that means distance. They nodded, even Ray, because this time they understood the difference between forgiveness and access. Sienna approached, slowly holding out a small envelope. I want you to have this. It's the ultrasound photo. You don't have to be involved. I just wanted you to be the first to see it. Her hand trembled. She wasn't manipulating. She wasn't performing. She was offering something fragile. I took the envelope, not for her, for myself, for the woman I was becoming. Mom pressed the tiny safe deposit key into my palm. "He loved you," she whispered, "even if he never got to meet you." For a moment, nobody moved. Then Ray exhaled shakily and said, "We'll give you space now." They turned back toward the SUV, walking carefully, slowly, like people who finally understood the weight of their own actions. When they reached the car, Sienna turned one last time. "Ev," she whispered, voice cracked and small, "thank you for not slamming the door." I watched them drive away until their car disappeared around the bend. Then I closed the door behind me, not harshly, not softly, just firmly. And in the silence that followed, I realized something simple, something powerful. This time, the silence belonged entirely to me. The morning after everything cracked open began with a light that felt too gentle for December. A pale silver wash drifted through the kitchen window, making the steam from my mug look softer, warmer, almost unreal. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the hum of a house that finally felt like mine. No buzzing demands, no guilt-laced messages, no emergencies disguised as family. When I picked up my phone, there were still no missed calls, no long paragraphs from Mom, no frantic typing dots from Sienna, no terse demands from Ray, just silence. For a moment, I let myself breathe into it. Liam patted into the kitchen, hair flattened on one side, socks mismatched. "Can we have waffles today?" he asked. "We can do waffles," I said, ruffling his hair. "It's a waffle kind of day." His grin told me that was the right answer. He didn't notice the absence of chaos, but I did. The weight that had been pressing me down for years was suddenly, miraculously gone. After breakfast, I sat down at my laptop to check my accounts again. I watched the numbers, the clean balance, the shrinking list of obligations. Everything that used to drain me without permission was gone: utilities, insurance subscriptions, medical bills, car payments that weren't even mine. The freedom was intoxicating. A notification popped up. "Your consignment sale is complete. The watch." I clicked the email. Sold. A small sting, but also relief. Martin, the appraiser, had left a short note. The buyer said the engraving held a lot of emotion. Items with history often find the right hands. History, emotion. He had no idea. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. Letting go was supposed to hurt. But this felt like air filling parts of my lungs that hadn't worked in years. Around noon, a knock sounded at the door. Not frantic, not insistent, just a single tap. I hesitated before opening it. No one stood outside, just a small brown paper bag sitting neatly on the step. I brought it inside and closed the door. Inside the bag was a simple watch, cheap-plated metal, the kind sold in discount stores. It looked almost like a parody of the one I'd bought Mom. There was also a folded note at the bottom. "I'm sorry. I can't undo everything, but I'm trying. Sienna." No signatures, but I knew the handwriting as well as my own. I sat with the note pressed between my fingers, unsure if I wanted to cry or laugh. It wasn't enough, not even close, but it wasn't nothing either. And for the first time, I didn't feel swallowed by her apology. I put the watch aside. Liam appeared in the doorway, holding a book. "Mom, are we happier now?" The question pierced me, simple and quiet. "Yes," I said honestly. "We are." He nodded thoughtfully, as if he needed that confirmation to steady himself. "Good. I like it better when it's just us." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "Me too." He stayed by my side for a moment longer, leaning his head against my arm before drifting back to his room. The afternoon passed in soft motions: laundry, sweeping, reheating leftover pasta. Normal things, peaceful things. Things I hadn't felt allowed to enjoy when every hour of my day existed on someone else's timeline. But peace never lasted long in my family. At 2:30, my phone buzzed. "Aunt Nora, your mom is still crying. Ray left for a while. Sienna says she wants to break the cycle but doesn't know how." Another message followed. "They're blaming each other. It's messy." I leaned back against the counter, the edges of the kitchen tile cool and grounding. My family had always been united in one thing benefiting from me. They'd never been united in accountability. Until now. A third message came from Lily. Sienna told Mom she's afraid. She said she doesn't want her baby to feel the way you felt. My breath caught. A strange ache blossomed behind my ribs. Not pain, not pity. Something more complicated. Something like recognition. I didn't answer. Instead, I spent the next hour reorganizing the hall closet, pulling out boxes I hadn't touched in years. Old holiday decorations, shoes that no longer fit. Buried beneath everything was the charcoal scarf I'd bought Mom, the one I'd once thought would repair something between us. I folded it gently, smoothing the fabric with my hand, then placed it into a donation bag. It wasn't a punishment, it was release. By late afternoon, snow drifted past the windows in soft, slow flakes. Liam joined me on the couch, curling up beside me with his head on my shoulder. "Are we watching the Christmas movie tonight?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "We're watching it every year from now on." He smiled, small and sweet. As the sky darkened, the last of the day's messages came. "Mom, I'm sorry for everything. There's more you need to know. Please let us come by tomorrow." Attached was a picture. At first glance, it looked like any old family snapshot, but the more I studied it, the more the edges blurred with familiarity. A little girl, me standing next to a tall man in a black coat, his face only half visible, his hand resting protectively on my shoulder. I remembered nothing, not a detail, not a moment. A caption followed, "It's about him." For a long moment I couldn't move. The edges of the world seemed to curl inward. The air in the room felt suddenly thinner, colder. I set the phone down slowly as if it might break. Liam looked up at me. "Mom, I'm okay," I whispered. "Just thinking." But I wasn't thinking. I was unraveling. The man in the picture, the watch, the secret my mother had avoided for decades. It all began to align like a constellation that had always been overhead, but invisible until now. When Liam fell asleep, I stood by the living room window watching snow collect on the streetlights. My reflection hovered faintly in the glass, softer around the edges. Some storms don't arrive with thunder. Some arrive with truth. And this one I knew would change everything. Tonight, though, there was peace. Tomorrow, I would open the envelope of answers I hadn't been ready for, and I would face whatever came with the strength that had carried me this far, finally, on my own terms. Christmas morning came quietly, without ceremony, without obligation, without the weight that used to sit on my chest before I even opened my eyes. I woke to the soft glow of the tree lights blinking from the living room and the faint patter of snow against the window. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't dread what the day would demand from me. There were no gifts hidden in my trunk for people who wouldn't appreciate them, no bank transfers scheduled to keep someone else's lights on, no expectations hanging over my head like icicles ready to fall. Just peace. And Liam. He barreled down the stairs a minute later, hair sticking up on one side, wearing his dinosaur pajama pants, and a grin that reminded me why I'd fought for this. "Merry Christmas, Mom." "Merry Christmas," I said, pulling him into a hug. His warmth wasn't something I'd ever taken for granted. His laughter wasn't something I ever wanted, dimmed by the noise of the family I'd stepped away from. Today was ours. We made pancakes the way he liked them, with too many chocolate chips and not enough batter. He splattered half the mix across the counter and declared it art. I let him. I let myself laugh. The kitchen smelled like vanilla and butter, and for a moment the world outside our walls felt too far to touch us. After breakfast, a knock sounded at the door, soft, cautious. My heart tightened for half a beat, but when I looked through the peephole, no one was there. Just a small envelope on the porch. I recognized the handwriting instantly, Clara's, the woman who'd bought the Subaru. I hadn't expected to hear from her again. Inside was a simple card with silver snowflakes and a handwritten note. "Your kindness changed our Christmas. I hope yours feels peaceful." It was short, but it warmed the coldest parts of me. A stranger had seen me more clearly in 1 week than my own family had in years. Liam tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, can we open the presents now?" I smiled. Of course. The two of us sat by the tree and unwrapped the small gifts we'd picked for each other. A knitted hat he'd chosen for me at a school fair. A new sketchbook I'd bought him because he loved drawing superheroes. Nothing extravagant, nothing performative, just love's small present real. When the morning faded into early afternoon, my phone buzzed for the first time all day. "Mom, Merry Christmas, Evelyn. I'm sorry for everything." I stared at the message a long moment, letting the words settle, letting them sting, letting them pass. It wasn't empty the way her apologies often were, but it wasn't enough either. Not yet. A second message followed. "We're outside, just dropping something off." I didn't like the way my pulse jumped, but I went to the door anyway. When I opened it, the driveway was empty. No SUV. No footsteps in the snow, just a brown paper bag sitting on the mat. Inside was a photo album. The old-fashioned kind, thick and heavy, with plastic sleeves. A folded letter rested on top, and beneath it something wrapped in tissue paper. I carried the bag inside and sat at the dining table, taking my time. The letter was short. "Ev, you deserve to know the parts of our story I never had the courage to tell. I didn't want you to think less of me or of him, but I was wrong to keep it from you. I'm trying to make this right. Love, Mom." My stomach tightened as I opened the album. The first few pages were normal me as a toddler in pigtails, Halloween costumes, birthday candles. But halfway through, the photos shifted. A man I didn't recognize at first appeared beside me in several pictures, tall, dark hair, soft eyes. He held me like I was something precious, something fragile. In one photo, I sat on his shoulders at a park, beaming. My breath caught. "Is that Grandpa?" Liam asked from behind me. "No," I said softly, tracing the man's face with my thumb. "That's my father." The book blurred slightly as memories. I didn't know I had fluttered at the edges of my mind. Nothing concrete, just warmth, hands steadying me, the sound of a low laugh. The tissue-wrapped item at the bottom of the bag suddenly made sense. Inside was the key again, the small safe deposit key Mom had given me briefly, the one tied to the past she'd never let me explore. This time there was a note attached. "For the place he left something for you." I let the key rest on my palm, cold and unfamiliar. Liam nestled beside me. "Do we have to go see Grandma today?" "No," I said. "Not today." He leaned against me, satisfied with the answer. Later, extended family messages trickled in. "Aunt Nora. They're quiet today. Not fighting. Not asking anything of anyone. It's different. Lily Sienna is trying. She's scared, but she wants to do better for her baby." That word "trying" felt like a small step in the right direction, but still a step I didn't have to take with them. As evening approached, I found another envelope on the porch. This one from Sienna, her handwriting shaky. "Eve, I don't expect you to forgive me, not fully. I just want to be better. For my baby. For myself. I grew up thinking love was something I deserved just for existing. You grew up thinking love was something you had to earn. I want neither of us to raise our kids that way. Thank you for being honest, and for not abandoning me, even when you should have." Love, Sienna. Inside the envelope was the ultrasound photo she had shown me the day before. I held it gently. A tiny blur. A tiny beginning. Christmas evening settled around us quietly. Liam and I watched a movie under a blanket, splitting a bowl of popcorn. When he fell asleep against my shoulder, I didn't move. I let myself feel the weight of him, the warmth, the safety. When I finally carried him upstairs and returned to the living room, the house was dim except for the soft glow of the tree. My phone buzzed. "Mom, there's more you need to know. Please meet us tomorrow." Attached was a picture, one I hadn't seen before. Me as a baby, asleep on the chest of the man in the black coat, his hand resting on my back, his eyes closed. A tenderness in the photo Mom had never shown me in real life. "It's about him," she wrote. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. My father, my real father, had been erased from my life so thoroughly that I had forgotten the shape of his face. Now a picture threatened to redraw everything I thought I knew. I placed the phone down, letting my fingers rest against the couch cushion, grounding myself. Tomorrow would bring questions, the kind my mother had avoided for 30 years. But tonight was the first Christmas that belonged entirely to me and my son. No guilt, no roles, no debt, no ache. Just peace blooming in all the places I once thought were beyond saving. Mom stood outside the cafe. Before I even stepped out of my car, the winter wind tugging at her coat as if trying to peel her open. She wasn't wearing makeup, unusual for her, and there were tight lines around her mouth that hadn't been there a week ago. When she saw me, she lifted a trembling hand in a half wave. Not demanding, not entitled, just uncertain. Inside the cafe was warm and smelled like cinnamon and roasted espresso. She chose a booth in the back, out of sight from the windows. A small gesture that for her meant she didn't want to put on a performance. That alone softened something in me. She didn't speak at first, just wrapped her fingers around her mug and stared at the steam like she needed to collect every thought she'd avoided for 30 years. "I should have told you the truth a long time ago," she finally whispered. "You deserved that." The room seemed to narrow around us. "About him," I said quietly. She nodded. "About your father." I had always pictured the story. One way my mom met my biological father, things didn't work out, she moved on. Ray came later, bringing his own brand of control and favoritism. But hearing her say the words out loud made something in my chest twist, the kind of twist that comes when a truth is too heavy to lift on your own. "He loved you," she said, voice cracking. "He loved you from the moment he knew you existed." "Then why didn't he stay?" Mom looked down at her hands. "Because I pushed him away." The words hit like an unexpected gust of cold air. "You," I repeated. She swallowed, eyes shiny. "I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't enough for him. Afraid he'd leave eventually. Afraid he'd see who I really was. He wanted a family. A real one. He wanted to be present, involved, stable. I didn't know how to handle that kind of devotion." "So, you pushed him out of my life," I said slowly. She nodded once, small and ashamed. "I told him I didn't need help, that I could handle everything alone. I told him I'd rather do it myself than owe him anything." The irony stung. She hated depending on him, yet spent years depending on me. "And the safe deposit box?" I asked. Mom reached into her purse and pulled out another letter, yellowed slightly at the edges. "He wrote this before he died," she said, sliding it across the table. "It was supposed to be yours when you turned 18. But I didn't want to open that door, because opening it meant admitting how wrong I'd been." My fingers trembled as I unfolded the letter. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. "Evelyn, if you are reading this, then your mother has done the bravest thing she could do. She has allowed you to know the truth. I loved you before you were born. I loved you even from a distance. I left what I could for you, not money, but memories. Pieces of who I was, so you might know where you come from, and so you never doubt your worth." I closed the letter before the rest could blur. Mom's voice broke. "You were never supposed to grow up feeling small. That was my failure, not his." I stared at her, years of hurt and confusion circling like cold wind around a doorframe. "I can't give you back what I took," she whispered, "but I can stop taking. I can step back. I can respect your boundaries. And I can finally tell you the truth." "Why now?" I asked, not unkindly. She breathed out slowly, like the truth itself weighed her down. "Because when you walked away, I realized you weren't afraid anymore. That terrified me. Not because I was losing control, but because I realized you'd spent your whole life afraid of losing us when really, we should have been afraid of losing you." The words were raw, honest, painful, and they landed deeper than I expected. A long silence stretched between us. Not hostile, not tense, just real. I folded the letter and held it gently. Mom, I don't know what our relationship is going to look like. Not yet. She nodded. I don't expect you to know today. Or tomorrow. I just want to earn whatever pieces of you you're willing to let me keep. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was honest. And honesty was something I hadn't had from her since childhood. We talked for nearly an hour about the safe deposit box, about my father's quiet kindness, about the mistakes she'd made, and the ones she was finally willing to own. When we stood to leave, she hesitated before touching my arm like she was asking permission with her eyes. I nodded, and her hand rested lightly against me. Brief, gentle nothing, like the old grip of expectation. The sky outside had brightened the snow sparkling like powdered glass. She gave a small wave before walking toward her car, her steps careful, her shoulders lower than I'd ever seen them. When I drove home, Liam was waiting at the door, face bright. Did it go okay? It did, I said truthfully. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. He hugged me tightly and I let myself sink into it. His arms around me felt like the safest place I'd ever known. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the Rockies, I went to my bedroom, opened a drawer, and took out the tiny safe deposit key. It felt cold against my palm, but not frightening, just unfinished. A whole other chapter waited behind that key. But for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of the unknown. I felt ready for it. Later that night, I stood at the living room window watching snow drift across the yard, soft and slow, like a gentle reminder. My reflection looked back at me, not the version of myself my family had shaped, but the woman I'd chosen to become. Not the provider, not the fixer, not the background character in someone else's life. Just me. Whole. Steady. Enough. I turned off the tree lights, exhaled into the quiet, and whispered a truth that settled warm in my chest. This house is mine. This life is mine. And for the first time in my entire life, I believed it. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If Evelyn's journey meant something to you, if you've ever broken free from a toxic dynamic or reclaimed your peace, I'd love to hear your thoughts below. Like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. Your support keeps these stories alive, and I'm so grateful you're here.